Today, on A Word on Westerns, Barry Corbin.
And then we had another scene with Jimmy, the young guy that they set down.
Now, he's spun off into a 4/6 series?
They're supposed to. I don't know whether it's going or not. I haven't heard anything about it. If they are, then I'll probably be there.
Okay. He's getting all these hot girls, and I'm going, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, he doesn't even go to a barber.
What a great role he had for that.
Cuts his hair with the horse clippers or something.
It kind of looked like that, and then they brand him and everything. You think you're going to get branded on the show?
No.
Welcome to A Word on Westerns, where we talk to the greatest Western creators of yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Hey, this is RJ Word, and welcome to A Word on Westerns.
I'm Rob Word, and I'd like to welcome you too. And we have a special guest today because he made Westerns, and that's what we're going to talk about. But he made more than just Westerns. I'm talking about the multi-award-winning character actor. You've all seen him, you love him, Barry Corbin. What do you think of him, RJ?
Well, I think Barry's a really cool dude, and honestly, this interview we did at his house instead of with a live audience when we were in Fort Worth, Texas this past year. And it really felt like, I considered even putting campfire audio into this interview because it feels like a campfire story, whatever he says.
Well, we were in his man cave, which was terrific too. There was stuffed animals on the wall, and we got to wear cowboy hats. Of course, I like to wear cowboy hats. Then we were there for the Will Rogers Awards because we had won an award for our YouTube show, A Word on Westerns, which is a video
version of this.
Yes, which we shoot with multiple cameras. But the Barry Corbin interview was just Barry and me sitting around a circular table and chewing the fat. And he tells great stories.
He sure does. And he also sure has some really cool memorabilia from all of his films there. And a longhorn that was was the lead longhorn in the cattle drive that they do through Fort Worth.
They do a cattle drive through the streets of downtown Fort Worth every day, and the steerhead that we saw with big longhorns on it was in Barry's big playroom that looks like a giant disco nightclub bar with multiple places to hang out.
Yeah, it could have been the set of Urban Cowboy, another film that Barry was in.
And it was a breakthrough film for him, too, Urban Cowboy was. He didn't really expect the success of that or the role that he had, which helped put him on the map. And he's done so many wonderful things since then. But his early career, he was brought up in Texas, and his father was a Texas state senator for 2 terms.
Mm-hmm.
He was the youngest state senator in Texas. He was 26 years old.
That's a year younger than I am right now.
Well, we need some younger blood like that now in the Senate and in the House. But hey, that's another story. We're going to talk with Barry today about some of his great adventures with Clint Eastwood, with John Travolta, how he got into acting because he was a writer to begin with. It's a fascinating story, and it could go on, and I could too, but I'm not.
Yeah, and Barry can't go on because he's so busy working all the time, like on Yellowstone.
Yep, and just about anything Taylor Sheridan does, and then Barry's got a one-man show that he has taken out on the road, and it's always a sellout. And after you hear his conversation with me today, you're going to know why. So let's kick it off right now with Barry Corbin.
I'm one lucky cowboy because I've got an old buddy a roper, a Shakespearean actor, a man who has accumulated almost 300 credits, and that doesn't count his TV series where he has hundreds of episodes. Who could I be talking about? He's laughing right now. It's Barry Corbin.
How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, I'm just dandy.
Well, you look dandy, and I tell you, you work more than anybody I know. It's like I turn on the TV, there you are again. Taylor Sheridan must think you're his good luck charm.
Well, I hope so.
I hope so, too.
He asked me one time, said, do you need a job? I said, have you got one? He said, I can write one. And I said, have at it.
Okay. He uses you a lot, and you've done some great stuff, and I think part of it is he writes so interestingly and authentically. Ben Johnson ain't here no more. It says, get Barry.
Well, yeah, I guess that's, I got some big boots to fill.
Oh, boy. Well, Ben was a buddy. You did the team roping, the charity benefits with him quite often.
Yeah. I used to enjoy his company. We did a couple of pictures together.
What ones?
One of them was called The Chase. He was taken hostage. He was an old man who was taken hostage. And we were sitting around over on the set one day. I wasn't working. I just happened to be over there. And Ben's looking depressed. I said, what's the matter, Ben? And he said, you see that old son of a buck over there? I said, yeah. He said, do I look that bad? Got in them in the teeth, you know. He said, I said, no. Why? He said, that's who I'm playing.
Oh. Well, it's Hollywood. You got to have Hollywood teeth and, look better.
Yeah, well, the guy I was playing was dead, so I couldn't compare it to him. He got killed in this robbery.
Well, he was certainly an authentic guy. Wonderful. I remember one time I had met him back in the 70s in Florida. He came to a film festival we put together with great Western stars. Dick Foran was there.
Oh, yeah. Dick Foran sang?
He did not.
He didn't?
Nope. We had a good time with him. Rod Cameron was there.
Yeah. I just met Rod's son.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Tony, yeah.
He's great. He was a ball player, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's done this show.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Oh, and tall. We screened one of the John Ford Westerns with him, and Ben was sitting in the audience, and the crowd just was loving it, to be in the same room with him.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember when I first saw, I think she wore a yellow ribbon. I didn't care anything about the movie, but I couldn't wait to see Sergeant Tyree ride or run across the screen on that horse, And he could ride.
Just beautiful to watch him. And then they did this trick shot where he jumps over the big valley, the canyon, and the Indians stop and rear up and they don't go. But he was just beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
And that was the first Technicolor Western shot in Monument Valley.
Yeah.
Beautiful stuff. You also did a couple films early on with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Honky Tonk Man, I like that film a lot.
Honky Tonk Man and...
one of the orangutan films.
Yeah. Any Which Way You Can.
Mm-hmm. Those were a surprise for Warner Brothers. They said, well, we'll let him make these monkey movies because he's going to do Dirty Harry for us.
Well, they did. I think they did better business than the other one.
They did. That was a surprise hit.
Well, that is Ruth Gordon, Put Ruth Gordon in something. And then you had old...
Jeffrey Lewis?
No, yeah, Jeffrey Lewis, but Annie Ramsey and Logan, her husband.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen when he threw his back out trying to have conjugal bliss with her.
Those movies just captured the world, I think.
Yeah.
It's so fun. And that was right after you did the Urban Cowboy movie, which was the first time I remember seeing you.
Well, that was the first thing I did when I got to California. And I did a couple of little commercials and stuff, but...
How did they find you for Urban Cowboy?
I wrote a play called Whiz Bang Cafe. No, it was... Yeah, that was it, the Whiz Bang Cafe. And it got to be kind of popular. I did it at L.A. Actors Theater in their one-act play.
How large was the cast?
Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think six people.
And you were spotted while you were performing.
Yeah, I didn't intend to be in it, but we couldn't find anybody to play this truck driver that comes through, and he instigates everything. He's driving the Dr. Pepper truck. He delivers Dr. Peppers. It's kind of a funny play, but that Universal saw it, and then they wanted to talk to me about being a writer over at Universal. So I went over and talked to them, and I wrote a couple of bad sitcoms. I couldn't figure out how to do it. Now I know how to do it. It's like this. You don't have to think.
It's a pattern.
It's a pattern. You go boom, 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 laugh, boom, 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 laugh. And you listen to the rehearsal, and the writers are all there. And they laugh at the place that you're supposed to laugh. So that's the way it is. You don't even have to, you just go and say the boom, and that's the laugh. And even if it's not, it is because they put it in.
Well, they know what they're doing, but, I know you've done a lot of sitcoms since then, but you were spotted then at Universal to be put into Urban Cowboy. Was that a Universal film?
No.
Those Paramount or something.
No, they weren't interested in me as an actor, but I needed an agent, so I looked in the list, and there was one called Writers and Artists. And I thought, well, must have writers, so I'll put it with them. And the head of the agency, Joan Scott, came to see it, but she brought her main acting agent with her, Jenny Raymond. And after the plays, they talked about it. Jenny said, I don't care if we take him as a writer or not, but I need him as an actor. And so that was that, and she's putting me up for Urban Cowboy. And I didn't know what it was. I was casting another play, a play I wrote called Sucker Rod Smith and the Cisco Kid. And I was going to play Sucker Rod Smith. But, they called me in to audition for Urban Cowboy, and I went over to Paramount, which was right down the street, and saw Jim Bridges and Aaron Latham, who wrote the script, Marion Dougherty, who was casting it. And I read for him. I thought it was just, kind of a one-day thing. I didn't know what it was. I didn't think about it too much. Went back to the casting session. And then about a week later, I got a call from my agent, said, you need to go into Paramount again. You got to meet John.
John who?
I said, who's John? I said, John Travolta. Well, I'd just seen Saturday Night Fever. I said, what's this guy got to do with it? I went in, met him, and he said, oh, we're going to have a lot of fun. And I said, yeah, I bet you are. I didn't know. So Jim Bridges said, go on over to the wardrobe and leave him those boots that you're wearing and that hat you're wearing, and we'll use that in the picture somewhere. And break in another hat and a pair of Tony Lama boots. I thought, well, that's a hell of a way to get my old wore-out clothes, but I'll do that, yeah. So I got my Tony Lama lizard skin boots, which don't ever wear in wet weather. They crack. But
they look mighty fine.
They look good, right, if you're just going to go to the dance hall. But
well, there was a lot of dancing in that, and the bull riding and everything. And Scott Glenn, that was an early Scott Glenn work, too.
Yeah, Scott had done Apocalypse Now, but he'd been cut out of it.
Well, I think he spent months on that.
Oh, he was over there for months and months, but he was cut out of the movie. It happens to you sometime. I got cut out of a movie one time. I had third billing in the movie, and I was the first 15 minutes in the movie. And then after that, they moved to another place, and I wasn't in it anymore. And the day they opened the movie, the director called me and said, well, I had to lose 15 minutes.
Oh.
He said, you are in the movie. You are in the movie, and you say one line.
How about your billing? Did you keep third billing?
I kept third billing.
All right. You disappointed a lot of people.
And the thing I did, I pulled a cigar out of my mouth. The camera went down a line of people. When it got to me, they paused, and I pulled a cigar out of my mouth. And I said, "That's bullshit."
That was it.
And that was it. That's all I was to say in the whole movie.
I want to see that movie now. What is that one called?
Called The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia.
Oh, that was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, it had
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid.
Yeah.
And what was that girl's name? Crusty.
Christy McNichol?
McNichol.
Yeah. No, I remember that. That was a good film. The film was a success, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a success, and I had third billing.
Pretty damn good. Wow.
I'm a good luck charm for a lot of
You must be. You must be. Urban Cowboy was a smash.
Yeah.
Maybe John Travolta had a little something to do with that.
Well, if they'd cast it the way they were originally going to do it, they were originally going to take the two young people that really did the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it was based on a magazine article
About Gillies.
About Gillies.
Yeah.
And the people who were in there with the prototypes for Bud and Sissy, they were going to use them as the actors, and they were going to surround them with known actors.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably would have had Ben Johnson play Uncle Bob or something, you know.
Well, I think they made the right choice to go with
I think, yeah, because John kind of.
and Deborah Winger.
And Lincoln. Yeah, Deborah was not, all she'd been up to that point was Wonder Woman's little sister.
Well, look at who broke out of that film. You and Scott Glenn and Deborah Winger. And it was really only Travolta's second film, but it just caught something that was going on in the country.
And Madeline Smith did it. You know, she had a short career, but it was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
She married to a hockey player, lives up in Canada now. She's got some kind of problem. I'm not sure what it is, but she can't travel much anymore.
Well, you're traveling a lot. You're doing these one-man shows and stuff, you know. You're in demand.
Funny thing, I met this guy who, he's with my agent. He's a songwriter, and his name is Jack Williams. Well, Jack was, you know, always looking for titles and ideas for songs. And he asked me, he said, do you fly or do you drive when you go on these things? I said, well, I'm hooked on the highway.
It's a song title.
And he said, that's it. And he wrote a song about it, sent me the song and said, I wrote it with a guy named Billy Lawson. So it's Jack Williams, Barry Corbin, and Billy Lawson are the writers for the song.
Mm-hmm.
Said, you've got to join ASCAP. So I did.
Excellent, excellent. That's a great title, though. I mean, you got to be ready to hear those things, too, though.
Yeah.
So did you sing it, too?
No, I didn't do it. It had anything to do with that, with anything except the title.
That's cool. Ray Whitley told me a story. You know, he'd written this song back when I met Ben back in the mid-'70s in Florida. He wrote a song called Back in the Saddle Again.
Yeah.
And Gene Autry came up to him and said, you know, I write a lot of songs, and I got a radio show, and I'm always looking for a theme song. If we do a 50-50 on that song you wrote, Back in the Saddle Again, I'll make it my theme song. Ray said he didn't wait a second. He said, all right, Gene.
Yeah, well,
put your name right there. And it's just such a perfect song.
That's better than Happy Trail.
Oh, well, that's good, too. But Dale Evans actually wrote that.
He wrote that.
Yeah.
Well, Gene used to, apparently, he and Smiley Burnett would be going down the road, and he said, I need a song.
Yeah.
And Smiley'd write it down on an envelope or something, and he'd pay him $5 for it.
Oh, no, I think he paid him more than that as part of the publishing. But if you look at those old wonderful B Westerns at Republic in the late 30s, you see Gene and Smiley, they get credit for like 5 or 6 songs in every movie. You know,
sure,
old Gene, he knew how to count money and make it, too.
Yeah, and then he married his banker.
Well, yeah, he did. And Jackie's great. Jackie's, she's the one who's helped open the doors for us to tape our shows at the Archery Museum.
She's responsible for the Archery Museum.
Well, she and Joanne Hale.
Yeah.
Joanne, we'd go to Santa Fe for some auction or something with beautiful paintings, and there would be Joanne looking to build stuff for the Autry Museum that hadn't opened yet.
Yeah.
And getting the best stuff and outbidding everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a great museum.
Yeah.
Great museum.
Oh, it is. It's the for what it is, it's the best there is.
I think when it first opened, it confused people because they thought it was going to be like the Roy Rogers Museum, which is all of his movie artifacts, which is wonderful, or was wonderful.
Gene didn't want. He wanted a Western
to honor Remington and Russell and those guys, and he did.
And he's got Buffalo Bill stuff in there. That Cowboy Museum up in Oklahoma City. That's you go downstairs, you think you're seeing it all up there, no?
That episode of Yellowstone where it's just you and Buster Wells sitting there together having a conversation, that seems so real. Was that scripted?
Well, Taylor Sheridan told me before we shot the scene, he said, I'm not going to write anything for this. And I'm not going to say action. I'm not going to say cut. I'm not going to direct it because Buster wouldn't listen anyway. Buster was in his 90s, up in his 90s, and he used to get horseback every day, even after he had his strokes. And I mean, he was in a wheelchair. But he'd have his people put him up on the horse and put a belt on him, and he'd ride every day. And he said, it always took him about twice as long to get me off the horse as it did to put me on. I said, why was that, Buster? And he said, I didn't want to get off. Well, I know how he felt because I went out to the Sixes about a year ago to help him gather cattle. It was really for a photo shoot for a magazine, but I was helping him gather cattle. And I was a horseback for about 6 hours. And we were gathering these cattle, and then we got them bunched up, and I started working a couple of them for the photos, Then I got back to where we mounted up, and I didn't know how I was going to get off. So I called this about 6'6" cowboy over and said, come over here, stand right here. I'm going to fall off this horse and you catch me. So that's what happened there. But anyway, Buster was a legendary cutting horse trainer. He designed the saddle that they use now. He was a Western historian, very, very knowledgeable. But he had a ranch, and he never would allow motor vehicles past the headquarters. They always go in a wagon or a horseback. And they'd go out and gather cattle and do it the old way. They'd drag calves to the fire and brand them and do everything the old way. But he was probably the last one that does it.
When did you first meet him?
I met him in, I want to say, 92, maybe. The last buckle that he won and the last buckle I won, we were partners in this cutting.
In the cutting.
And we had a youth, a legend, and a celebrity. And the youth, I don't remember. It was a young woman from either Mississippi or Alabama. I'm not sure where. But then Buster was the celebrity. I mean, the legend.
The legend.
And I was the celebrity.
Well, I thought at first you might have been the youth because I know they skew old.
Yeah, well, I could have been, but I let her do it. Anyway, they went first, and they had very high scores. So all I had to do was just hold the cow.
Well, I've seen you work a cutting horse before, too, and you don't fall off.
No, I don't fall.
You look real good up there.
But anyway, we won, and so after that, whenever I'd see Buster, he'd say, what buckle are you wearing? And I'd show him the buckle I was wearing, and the one we won together. He showed me his. He was wearing the same thing. When we did that show.
You both had your buckles on?
No, I had the buckle on, but he had his legend buckle, which is a real gold-plated, heavy thing, He was a very remarkable man, and when we had the Roundup for Autism, Bobby Norris's thing over here, it was a month or two ago, I auctioned that buckle off I said, I'm going to auction off this buckle. And I've worn it in every movie that was appropriate in since 2000.
What did it go for?
Yes.
I have no clue. 20 grand.
No. 18.
Oh,
18.
I was close.
Yeah.
I was close. That'd be special to have that. Well,
Yeah.
here's to that.
And the guy said he was going to put it in a frame and put it in his office.
Mm-hmm. Pretty special.
Yeah.
Well, you had already heard about Buster years ago, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He was probably the most famous cutting horse trainer there was. So when we're doing the scene, we talked for probably nearly an hour. I know they reloaded the camera once, at least.
They should put that extra footage on as an extra or a bonus.
Taylor told me that he was going to donate it to Texas Tech for their library. So
it's available then.
yeah, hopefully, I don't know. What they used in the show was just enough to establish that this was Buster Welch, and it was, I was talking to him.
It was a nice scene, though, because it was just so different from everything else that was going on. I mean, they're murdering people, burying them in the backyard and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And here you got this nice scene.
And then we had another scene with Jimmy, the young guy that they set down there.
And he's spun off into a 4/6 series?
They're supposed to. I don't know whether it's going or not. I haven't heard anything about it. If they are, then I'll probably be there.
Okay. I'll bet you will be if they do that. I always felt like, this guy in Yellowstone, he's getting all these hot girls. And I'm going, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, he doesn't even go to a barber.
What a great role he had for that.
Cuts his hair with the horse clippers or something.
It kind of looked like that. And then they brand him and everything. You think you're going to get branded on the show?
No.
It's always great to hang out with Barry and his wife Jo, but for him to have welcomed us into his man cave in his backyard was a special treat, and I hope all of you enjoyed our conversation with him.
So you can have a lot of weird pets in Texas. We're out here in LA, and I'm not sure what the legality of this is, but I would love to have an Aldabra tortoise like Barry has. He has this giant tortoise that I believe was 60 years old that just sits around on a disc that she gets on when she wants you to drag her around. And they just bring her around that big piece of property, and she's as sweet as could be. And I think maybe I'll get one of those and burden my grandchildren as it outlives me.
Well, you better have them soon because I'm getting quite up there myself, so I want to see that happen.
Noted.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We hope to hang out with you again on the next A Word on Westerns.
Happy trails, folks.
If you enjoy what we do here, please take a moment to follow our show and share these interviews with your friends. You can also find A Word on Westerns on Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you, and see you next week on A Word on Westerns. Westerns is produced and hosted by Rob and RJ Word, and produced by Caroline Parker Stark. Edited by Alex Lockett and Bohr and Ebor Dro. Location audio is provided by Richard Reagan. Sound design by Alex Lockett. A Word on Westerns theme song was composed by Karel Pasoda, with additional arrangements by Shipwreck Music and RJ Word.